Everyone stepped away from him. Every smile faded. Every conversation ended early. But when the room turned cold, one beautiful stranger stayed, and that single choice changed two broken lives forever. This story isn't just about love. It's about choosing someone when the world refuses to. Stay with us till the end, and don't forget to subscribe to Black Inside USA for more powerful emotional stories. All women chose to avoid him, but the beautiful stranger stayed. The rooftop was alive with light. Glass towers shimmered against the night sky, city reflections dancing like distant stars. Soft music floated through the air, blending with quiet laughter and polite conversation. It was one of those gatherings where everything looked perfect on the surface: expensive clothes, confident smiles, carefully chosen words. Yet beneath the glow, not everyone belonged. He stood near the edge of the rooftop, hands resting calmly in his pockets, eyes fixed on the skyline as if the city might answer questions no one else would. His posture was confident, but something about him made people hesitate. Conversations slowed when he approached. Glances flickered away too quickly. One by one, women found reasons to step aside. Some checked their phones, some turned back to their friends, some smiled politely and disappeared. He noticed. He always did. Years of quiet observation had taught him how rejection sounded even when it wasn't spoken. A pause too long, a laugh too forced, a shift of feet toward the exit. Tonight was no different. Until she arrived, she didn't enter loudly, she didn't demand attention. She simply stepped onto the rooftop like she belonged there, graceful, composed, wearing a red dress that caught the light without trying to steal it. Her smile wasn't practiced, it was warm, and when her eyes met his, she didn't look away. A man the world misunderstood. His name was Ethan Hale. To the outside world, Ethan was successful, composed, untouchable. He had built a life most people admired from a distance. But admiration wasn't connection, and he had learned that the hard way. People made assumptions. They thought he was distant, cold, too serious. They didn't know the silence came from loss. They didn't know confidence was armor. Ethan wasn't avoided because of who he was, but because people sensed the depth beneath him, and depth made them uncomfortable. He had stopped trying to explain himself long ago. So when another woman turned away tonight, he barely reacted. He simply breathed in, breathed out, and focused on the city below. That's when he heard her voice. "Beautiful view," she said gently. He turned. She was standing a few steps away, not too close, not too far. "Close enough to mean it." "Yeah," he replied, "it reminds you how small everything is." She smiled. Or how connected. That answer surprised him. Most people talked about success, power, height. She talked about connection. "I'm Amara," she added. "Ethan." They shook hands. Her grip was steady, confident, real, and for the first time that night, he felt seen. The choice that changed everything. Amara had noticed what others pretended not to. She saw the way people drifted away from Ethan without explanation. She saw how he never chased them, never begged for attention. There was dignity in that. She had spent her life surrounded by noise, people who talked endlessly but never listened. Men who wanted admiration but offered nothing genuine in return. Ethan was different. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't try to impress her. He simply listened. Minutes turned into an hour. The music softened, the crowd thinned, yet Amara stayed. When someone called her name from across the rooftop, she glanced back briefly, then returned her attention to Ethan. "I think they're wondering why I haven't left," she said lightly. "Most people do," he replied honestly. "Well," she said, meeting his eyes, "most people don't decide for me." That sentence landed deep. Two quiet stories collide. They talked about small things at first. The city, travel, favorite late-night food. Then slowly, carefully, the conversation drifted deeper. Ethan spoke about building something meaningful, not just financially but emotionally. About how success meant little without someone to share silence with. Amara spoke about starting over. About walking away from a life that looked perfect but felt empty. About choosing peace over approval. Neither of them rushed. There was no pressure, no performance, just two people meeting without masks. By the time the night ended, the rooftop was nearly empty. "I didn't expect tonight to go like this," Amara admitted. "Me neither." She hesitated, then smiled. "Would you like to continue this conversation sometime?" Ethan nodded. "I would." And just like that, something began. Love without noise. Their relationship didn't start loudly. There were no grand announcements, no dramatic gestures, just coffee that turned into long walks, just late-night calls that stretched into sunrise. just comfort growing where loneliness once lived. Ethan learned that Amara stayed, not because she felt sorry for him, but because she recognized him. Amara learned that Ethan wasn't distant, he was careful with his heart. They healed in pieces. She reminded him that being chosen wasn't weakness. He reminded her that staying didn't mean settling. And when the world tried to pull them apart, through opinions, assumptions, whispers, they stood quietly together. When the world tests real love, not everyone approved. Some questioned Amara's choice. Some warned her he was too much. Some suggested she could do better. She listened politely, then ignored them all. Because love didn't feel heavy with Ethan, it felt safe. And when Ethan noticed the pressure she faced, he offered her an out. "You don't have to stay if it costs you too much," he said one evening. She reached for his hand. "I'm staying because it gives me everything." That was the moment he realized something profound. Being avoided had prepared him to cherish the one who stayed. The quiet ending that meant everything. Months later, they returned to the same rooftop. The city looked the same, but they were different. Stronger, calmer, together. Ethan looked at Amara and smiled. Funny how one decision changed everything. She smiled back. Funny how staying is sometimes the bravest choice. They stood side by side, not needing words. Because some love stories aren't loud. Some are chosen. The city never slept, but that night, it felt quieter. Ethan stood by the window of his penthouse, watching headlights trace lines through the streets below. The glass reflected his silhouette, steady and composed, yet inside him something unfamiliar was growing. Hope. It surprised him how deeply Amara had settled into his thoughts. Not loudly, not forcefully, she had entered his life the same way she had entered the rooftop, without noise, without demands. Just presence. He hadn't felt this calm in years. Most connections in his past had come with expectations. Questions he was tired of answering. Judgments disguised as curiosity. But with Amara, silence felt safe. Conversation felt easy, and that scared him a little. The morning after a new beginning, Amara woke to sunlight spilling across her apartment floor. For a moment, she lay still, replaying the previous night, the skyline, the conversation, the way Ethan had listened like every word mattered. She smiled. It had been a long time since she felt that kind of warmth after meeting someone new. Usually, mornings brought doubt, overthinking, second-guessing her own instincts. But today felt different. Her phone buzzed. A message. "Ethan, I hope today greets you kindly. Would you like to get coffee later?" No pressure. No assumptions. She replied almost immediately. "Amara, I'd like that." She didn't realize it then, but that simple exchange marked the start of something deeper, something neither of them was prepared to lose. Learning each other slowly, they didn't rush. Days turned into weeks filled with small moments, shared meals, quiet laughter, thoughtful conversations. Ethan learned that Amara loved bookstores more than luxury restaurants. Amara learned that Ethan remembered details most people forgot. He noticed when she hesitated before answering certain questions. She noticed how his voice softened when he talked about the past. They were careful with each other. One evening, as they walked along the river path, Amara finally asked, "Why do you think people keep their distance from you?" Ethan stopped walking. For a second, she thought she'd crossed a line. Then he exhaled slowly. "Because I don't pretend," he said. "I don't hide the weight I carry. And some people only want light conversations." She nodded. "I think they mistake depth for difficulty." He looked at her then, really looked at her. That's the first time anyone said that. When feelings start to show, as their bond deepened, so did the attention around them. Friends asked questions. Strangers made assumptions. Some admired, others whispered. Ethan noticed the looks Amara received, how people wondered why someone like her chose to stay close to him. He never asked her about it directly, but it lingered in his thoughts. One night, over dinner, Amara set her fork down and said, "You're thinking too loudly." He raised an eyebrow. "Is it that obvious? You're worried I'll change my mind?" He didn't deny it. "I've watched people leave," he said honestly. "Not because they wanted to, but because the world told them to." Amara reached across the table and took his hand. "Ethan," she said softly, "I didn't stay because no one else wanted you. I stayed because I did." That night, something shifted. Not passion, not promises, trust. The past comes knocking, but life doesn't let healing happen without testing it. One afternoon, Amara ran into someone from her past, a man who once offered her everything she thought she wanted. Status, security, applause. He smiled when he saw her. "I heard you're seeing someone." She nodded. "People say he's complicated." She met his gaze without hesitation. People say a lot of things. The encounter left her unsettled, not because she doubted Ethan, but because it reminded her of how easily voices from the outside tried to shape choices. That evening, she told Ethan everything. He listened quietly, then said, "Do you ever wish for something easier?" She thought for a moment. "No," she answered, "I wish for something real." When love is questioned, the pressure didn't stop. Ethan's colleagues questioned his focus. Amara's friends questioned her future. The world had a way of challenging love that didn't fit expectations. One night, the weight became too much. "I don't want to be the reason you carry extra burden," Ethan said quietly. Amara turned to face him. "And I don't want to live a life where I leave when things matter most." Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness but from clarity. "This is my choice," she said. "Let me make it." Ethan pulled her into a gentle embrace. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to believe he didn't have to face everything alone. A promise without words. They returned to the rooftop again, not for nostalgia, but for grounding. The city lights shimmered just like before, but now they stood closer. "Do you know why I stayed that night?" Amara asked. He shook his head. "Because when everyone else walked away," she said, "you didn't harden. You stayed kind." Ethan smiled. "And you reminded me that being chosen doesn't have to be loud." They didn't say forever. They didn't say always. They didn't need to. Because sometimes love isn't a declaration. It's consistency. Love doesn't break loudly. Sometimes it trembles quietly, in unanswered calls, in heavy pauses, in fears we try not to name. Ethan felt it before it happened. Something was coming. When the past refuses to stay silent. The message arrived on a quiet morning. A name Ethan hadn't seen in years. A chapter he thought he had closed. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cruel. It was simply unfinished. The past had returned, demanding clarity, about a decision Ethan once made that shaped everything people misunderstood about him. A decision that cost him relationships, trust, and belonging. That day, Ethan withdrew. Not because he didn't trust Amara, but because he didn't want her pulled into something heavy, something that might confirm every doubt the world had tried to plant in her mind. Amara noticed immediately. His replies shortened. His voice sounded distant. His presence, guarded. She didn't accuse him. She didn't chase him. She waited, the space that heard more than words. Days passed. For the first time since they met, silence sat between them. Amara sat by her window one evening, city lights flickering outside, wondering if this was the moment love often reaches, the moment where staying cost something real. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan, I'm sorry I've been distant. I didn't want to bring shadows into what we have." Her heart tightened. She typed, erased, then finally wrote, "Amara, you don't protect love by hiding. You protect it by trusting." There was no immediate reply. That night, she slept restlessly, unsure if the man who once stood calmly alone was now choosing solitude again. The truth Ethan feared to share. They met the next evening. Not at the rooftop, not somewhere symbolic, just a quiet place, neutral ground. Ethan looked tired. "I've spent my life believing that if people knew everything about me," he said slowly, "they'd leave faster." Amara listened, eyes steady. He told her the truth. About a decision he made long ago, one that saved others but cost him his reputation. One that couldn't be explained without sounding defensive. One that taught him silence was safer than honesty. "I learned how to stand alone," he said. "But I never learned how to let someone stand with me." The room was quiet. Then Amara spoke. "You don't need to be perfect for me," she said. "You just need to be real." His voice broke, just slightly. "I was afraid you'd choose easier." She shook her head. "I already chose." The moment love became a choice again. Still, doubt lingered, not between them, but around them. People talked, assumptions resurfaced, pressure returned. Ethan felt the old instinct rise, the need to step back, to protect Amara by stepping away. So he did the hardest thing he'd ever done. He gave her a choice. "I won't hold you here," he said quietly. "If staying becomes too heavy, I'll understand." Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then she stood up. For a second, his heart dropped. But instead of leaving, she walked around the table and sat beside him. "I didn't stay because it was easy," she said. "I stayed because it mattered." She reached for his hand. "And I'm still here." The return to the rooftop. Weeks later, they returned to where it all began. The rooftop. The city lights shimmered just as they had that first night, but now the air felt different. Calmer, grounded. Ethan looked around and smiled. Funny how this place once felt lonely. Amara leaned into him, Funny how staying can change everything. He turned to her. Thank you, he said, for choosing me when the world didn't. She smiled softly. I didn't choose you against the world. I chose you for who you are. They stood there quietly, no applause, no audience. Just two people who had learned that love isn't proven by how loudly someone stays, but by how firmly they do. Final reflection. Narration gold. Not everyone will understand your choice. Not everyone will see what you see. But when love is real, it doesn't need permission, it only needs courage. If this story moved you, subscribe to Black Inside USA for more emotional, romantic stories about love, loyalty, and the power of staying. Because sometimes, the most beautiful love stories begin when everyone else walks away.